Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I'm Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers. And Jack, we finally did it. We finally scheduled a post-game show after a game that the Diamondbacks won as they beat the Atlanta Braves tonight by a final score of 8-3. Zac Gallen was good in this game, Jack. We'll talk about him more a little bit later in the show. But really, Ketel Marte and Corbin Carroll stole all the storylines. Each of those guys hitting 2 home runs in this game. This is the first time in franchise history where the Diamondbacks 1 and 2 hitters have each had a multi-home run game at the same time.
It was quite the show they put on. Ketel Marte has been incredible with the power since he's come off the injured list, and it was really great to see Corbin swinging at strikes again. And you see the good things that happen when he does that.
I was prepared to come on here and talk about Zac Gallen for the most part. I mean, Gallen's 7 innings, 3 runs, but only one of them earned, 89 pitches. He was very efficient, and we certainly will get into that later in the show, as I said earlier. Once Corbin Carroll hit the 3-run home run in the 9th inning that really blew this game open, I think allowed a lot of Diamondbacks fans to just be able to breathe out a nice sigh of relief and feel a little bit less stressed going into the bottom of the 9th inning. And that was a game changer for the Diamondbacks for sure, but also just cemented Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte as being the central storyline in this game. It's been a while, Jack, since we've seen both of those guys really play well at the same time. It really has not happened all that much this year, even though their numbers for the season have really been impressive the whole way.
Yeah, our good buddy Steve Zinsmeister had tweeted out recently that Ketel and Corbin had never had multi-hit games in the same game this year. So I guess that's the first time that happened. And it's the first time in franchise history the number 1 and 2 hitters both had 2-homer games. It was Ketel's 11th career 2-homer game. It was Corbin Carroll's 8th, and it was his 4th this year for Corbin and 3rd this year for Ketel. It's so impressive what Ketel Marte is doing since he came off the injured list. We talked a little bit a couple weeks ago about whether or not he could play his way into an all-star berth. And he seems to be on the way to doing that, despite the fact that he missed a month. It's extremely impressive. And then Corbin, getting to 18 home runs already, on June 3rd, just incredible. Really fantastic stuff.
So Ketel Marte returned from the injured list on May 2nd and has by and large played pretty well since then. The numbers certainly show that at this point. But Corbin Carroll, since May 2nd, Jack, entering today, was only hitting .215 with a .777 OPS. So Carroll was dominant in April. I mean, looked like a total MVP candidate and certainly still could be. But it felt like the moment Ketel Marte came back, it was like, all right, now Ketel is sort of your superstar hitter and Corbin Carroll is taking a back seat. And I think as we think ahead to what this Diamondbacks season could ultimately look like when all is said and done, one of the biggest reasons to still have some hope about this team that is underwhelmed is that Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte are about as good of a 1-2 punch as you'll find in this league. Not necessarily the best. We know about the Dodgers. We know about, there are other teams that I think would be in that conversation as well. But it is one of the best. And if Corbin is able to continue to work his way out of this slump that he's been in, and Ketel continues to play like the MVP caliber player that he's been the past couple of years, you could be talking about something really special at the top of this lineup.
I like how you caught yourself there. I had this mental image of Dodger fans, ramming down the barricades after you said that this was the best 1-2 punch in the game.
Yeah, I know I know I can't say that, but I do remember this was a few weeks ago now when I was back in the press box for a night, and I do remember asking you. This was over the course of that weekend series when the Dodgers were in town. I do remember posing the question to you: would you rather have Ohtani and Betts or Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte from now through the end of the season. And at that point, Ohtani's OPS was still in the 800s, I think. Mookie Betts was in the 700s at that point. He was starting to work his way out of the slump, but his numbers had not bounced back. And Ketel Marte is Ketel Marte, and Corbin, certainly at that point, his numbers still looked really good. So I think it was a valid question, but I know at the time you were skeptical of Corbin and Ketel being able to outperform both Ohtani and Betts when all was said and done.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ohtani's doing Ohtani things. Mookie's not having a great year. He's down. But, at the bottom line, these are the guys that the Diamondbacks have. These are the guys we cover. And it's fun watching them play when they're on. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's no question that Corbin Carroll has an absolute ton of power. If he can ever match that with a consistent batting average and on base, then he is an MVP candidate. But even if he doesn't, even if it falls a little short of being an MVP candidate, to have a guy like that at the top of the order that teams have to be careful with, and something he just said on the postgame show about having Ketel batting behind him and just how much fun it is and how great it is to have a guy like that hitting behind him. Those are the kinds of 1-2 punches that great lineups and great teams are made of. So, as you said, if they're going to make a run at any point, it's in large part probably going to be because their good production times cross over more frequently than they have been before tonight.
Corbin finished 3 for 4, 2 homers, 4 RBI, and a walk. Ketel 3 for 3, 2 homers, 3 RBI, and 2 walks. So combined 6 for 7 with 4 home runs and 7 RBI and 3 walks. Pretty impressive stuff from that duo. Of course, Zac Gallen was also really good for the Diamondbacks in this game, Jack, as you see his numbers here on the screen: 7 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, only 1 of them earned, 1 walk, and 4 strikeouts. This was a really big step in the right direction for Zac Gallen after obviously a pretty rough stretch here recently.
Very impressive. The 21 of 27 first pitch strikes, 73% strike rate. Yes, the Braves were helping him out, a lot of early swings. But Zac did a great job also of hitting the edges, and he didn't give up too much hard contact. And a lot of the hard contact that he gave up was on the ground. I have to go back and look again, but at one point he had like 5 or 6 balls over 100 miles an hour, but 3 of them were ground balls. Then there was the home run by Baldwin. There was the base hit by Acuna. But, for the most part, he did a really good job of painting when he had to paint. He had that rough 4th inning. It wasn't his fault. I mean, he should have been out of that inning with just, the 1 run and the 1 single against him. That 4th inning was a bit rough. We'll get to that in a minute. But overall, just fantastic to see him turn it around. They need more of this. Maybe it's a step-up moment, considering the Corbin Burnes situation. If this is what it took to kind of get him to say, all right, screw it, I'm just going to throw strikes, I'm going to pound the zone, then it's worth it. I mean, maybe we get Zac Gallen that we need for this team to be, a true contender.
Michael McDermott, our good friend, said in the chat, fun fact, since May 2nd, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. has a higher WRC plus at 154 than Ketel Marte at 152, although Marte has the edge in OPS 929 to 920. Lourdes Gurriel has really heated up and is not generally going to get the notoriety that someone like Ketel will get. Granted, he probably shouldn't because his overall numbers for the season are still... Yeah, they're good, but they're fine, but they're not exactly in Ketel Marte range. We also have a comment that says that Gino is a huge defensive liability, and that is something we will address later in the show as well. We've got a whole lot more to get to in this episode, but first, a quick break here from the guys over at Foul Territory.
FT fan by now, if you're buying, selling, trading, collecting cards, Arena Club is the spot. We've been talking about them all season long, but I do want to focus on the slab pack experience, Kratz, since you've been ripping some slab packs digitally. And what happens?
I mean, as a kid, you wanted to rip open the packs. How can they do this digitally? Oh, baby. This is exciting. How the graphics come out and everything. And oh, yeah, the card that you pull, you can actually get that, John, physically. So it's perfect. It's all in one place, and it's a super exciting experience.
Yeah, they send that to you from the vault if you want it. But if you look at it and you're like, it's not the card for me, I want to sell back, go for it. You can do any of that on Arena Club, and you can acquire the best value for your money with those slab packs, transparent checklists, and Arena Club's Slab Safe program. Right now, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/FAL and use code FAL. arenaclub.com/FAL, use code FAL.
Well, Jack, you mentioned earlier the ground ball frequency for Zac Gallen and how that was a big thing for him in this game. This season, Gallen entered with a 39.8% ground ball rate, which is really not very good at all. And that's not to say that Gallen has been a hardcore ground ball pitcher in the past. It's not totally necessary for Gallen to dial up a whole bunch of ground balls in order to be effective. But if your ground ball rate's in the 30s, that can make things pretty tough. It becomes a lot more difficult to prevent home runs if you're allowing that much contact in the air. And for Gallen in this game, Jack, it was 14 ground outs compared to just 3 flyouts. Really good to see him kind of move in that direction.
It also should have been 16 ground outs, but we'll get there too.
That is a fair point. Also with Gallen, just as you said earlier, the fact that he was willing to throw strikes, it felt like in this game in a way that maybe he hasn't been recently. Gallen in the game altogether, 89 pitches. He was very, very efficient, and 65 of those were strikes. You certainly have to love that ratio. His in-zone rate was 52%, which is also a pretty healthy number. And he also got a ton of chase in this game as well, a 37% chase rate from the Atlanta Braves. That means that of pitches out of the zone that Gallen threw, Braves hitters swung at 37% of them. I'm not really sure I understand the calculus there on the Braves side, given that Gallen came into this game leading the National League in walks.
Yeah, it wasn't a great strategy on their part. And you bring up a great point, and it's actually something that, for our listeners, if you ever do mosey on over to Baseball Savant, look at the player breakdowns page, and that's where you'll find the zone percentage, which is the percentage of pitches in the zone. That's very different than strikes or strike percentage, because any ball hit in play, whether it was on a strike or not, whether it was in the zone or not, is considered a strike. A hit is a strike. A home run is a strike. A ball that's way out of the zone that the pitcher swings at, that the hitter swings at, is a strike. So, strike percentage is important to look at, but it can be misleading sometimes. So it's always good to double check the zone percentage as well.
On that note, Gallen, his changeup zone rate was only 37% tonight. And yet, you look at the changeup in particular, he wound up with 14 strikes on 19 changeups because he just got so much chase out of the zone. And that's something that we saw, I think, quite a bit last year, Jack, where Gallen's fastball was not playing particularly well. However, he was still able to get decent results because he had insane strike rates on both his curveball and his changeup. Not because he was throwing tons of them in the zone, but he had healthy strike rates on both of those pitches because he tends to get a lot of chase there. And that's something that we haven't seen as much so far this season for him. He's throwing those pitches out of the zone and he's just not getting chase. And, that's why Gallen entered this game leading the league in walks. It just was too dependent on getting guys to swing out of the strike zone.
Yeah. Well, he's a very competitive guy. He's very fiery inside. A lot of people don't know that about him, but that's his inner personality. So it's good to see him finally say, all right, screw this. I'm throwing strikes tonight. I'm going to challenge these guys. But like you said, he got ahead with his fastball a lot too. He threw a lot of strikes with his fastball, and then, got them to chase on the curveball and on the changeup quite a bit.
Gallen threw 23 pitches in the first 3 innings of this game, which is kind of wild. It was 9 up, 9 down, 3 perfect innings on 23 pitches. It was tied for the fewest pitches by any pitcher this season through 3 innings. Pretty impressive. And he could have had an even lower pitch count than he wound up with at the end of the night, Jack, because Eugenio Suarez did not do him any favors in the bottom half of that fourth inning. It was a slow roller by Marcell Ozuna up the third baseline. It was only 67 miles per hour off the bat. This happened with just a runner at first and 2 outs, and Gino was unable to make the play. It slid under his glove, wound up being a double, and Matt Olson was able to score all the way from first. The Braves wound up scoring 2 more runs that inning as a result of the error, and Zac Gallen wound up throwing 11 more pitches as a result of the error. And I think even though this was a very nice win for the Diamondbacks overall, I think we can also be honest, as someone pointed out in the chat earlier, that they still made some mistakes in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you had the Suarez error. You also had 2 outs on base, but sticking with Gino, I mean, the defense is an issue. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We have Jason Armstrong asking, can we discuss Gino as a DH? The problem with that is when you want to DH him and how do you make out the rest of the lineup? And oh, by the way, who plays third base? So, if you take the roster as they have it now and say, all right, for example, Suarez is going to DH against left-hand pitching. Well, then when does Randall Grichuk play? And I guess we're sticking Tim Tawa over at third base, or are we playing Ildemaro Vargas all the time at third base? I mean, it just doesn't work with the current roster construction. So, as frustrating as it is to see Gino struggle and, quite frankly, decline defensively, and I'm not, shy about using those words, he is in defensive decline, they're going to have to just kind of get through it through the rest of the year. They don't really have another good option, to put in at third base and just slide him into the DH role. It probably wouldn't hurt to let him DH an occasional game, just get him off his feet. I think you got to give quarter to the fact that he's a bit older. And, so maybe instead of him playing 155 games, which I think is what he's on pace for or whatever, maybe that needs to be dialed back. DH once a month, take 2 games off, just give him a little bit more time off his feet. We use that phrase a lot, or Tori uses that phrase a lot, off his feet. But I think in Gino's case, it's justified. I don't know how else you manage it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Gino, to his credit, I know the narratives with him have changed quite a bit this season. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster where he came out of the gates and was phenomenal, right? First couple series of the year. And then it felt like he looked like he did toward the beginning of last year, where he was just lost at the plate for a few weeks. And now we've seen Gino bounce back really nicely. And he has an 819 OPS, Jack, and 16 home runs and 44 RBI. He is very comfortably on pace for another 3,100 season. I think as of right now, he is comfortably on pace to exceed both of those numbers. And so, yeah, Gino has still been a productive player on the whole for the Diamondbacks. He has a ton of value to them, given that, as you said, they don't really have any other great options to play third base in this organization right now. But yes, he entered today with -6 outs above average. Here as we are at the beginning of June. I imagine that might be -7 after that error that he made there in the fourth inning. So you'd like to see him get better defensively, but at the same time, it's, he's still been a net positive very clearly for this team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, look, he's also net positive in the clubhouse as well, beyond the power stats you just quoted. They need a guy like that. So, you don't want to take his joy out of the game as well. Like I said, give him a little bit more rest. I think he'll probably play a little bit better defense.
Yeah.
I sent a picture to a friend of mine, and it was a still photo of Corbin Burnes releasing a pitch, and there was Gino in the background with his hands on his knees as the pitch was already released. And like we learned in Little League, your hands shouldn't be on your knees when you're getting ready to, when the pitcher's about to deliver the pitch. And I just think that, he gets a little tired on this. If it's a long inning, a 25 pitch inning, and he's standing out there a while, I think it gets to him. He's not in as great of, physical condition maybe as he used to be. So let's get him some rest. That's my opinion. I would think that Tori would be able to handle that. That's their specialty, isn't it?
Yeah, some people very much feel that way for sure. I don't want to dwell on this aspect of the game, Jack, but you did mention it, and it is not ideal that the Diamondbacks made a couple more outs on the bases in this game. Corbin Carroll was caught stealing, and then shortly thereafter, Ketel Marte walked and was picked off first base. For as great as both Carroll and Marte were in this game, you don't love an inning where your top two hitters each draw walks and then are promptly erased from the bases shortly thereafter.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, because of the home runs, we're going to have to give them a pass, but that's something again that they have to clean that up a little bit. I mean, there could have been a very narrative with this game between, Gino's error and one other play that was kind of a misplay as well. He took a ball off the palm of his hand because he didn't get his glove up quick enough, on a hop. Between those two plays and the two base running mistakes, had Alec Thomas not made a pretty darn good catch in center field, we call it a game-saving catch. I heard through the grapevine that the catch probability on that was actually quite high. I think it's a combination of the fact that the ball hung up for a very long time and he was playing pretty deep. So it was surprisingly high catch probability. So maybe it wasn't quite as great a catch as it looked visually, but it was pretty darn good. And he made the play. And, that saved a couple of runs probably right there. So, this game really very easily could have gone the other way. And we would have been lamenting those mistakes. Fortunately, we're not there tonight.
Well, to all of you here joining us live, we really appreciate you being here and love seeing all the comments coming through. Be sure to drop a like on the video if you have not already. We'd love to see that number jump up a little bit higher. We have some Corbin Burnes news to get to, Jack. Not quite the level of specifics that we might like to have at this point, but we are going to talk about what we do know about Corbin Burnes as well as the implications of that on the other side of our last break here on Snakes Territory.
Scott, you need to check out this Roback hoodie I have. It's 85 plus degrees here in Florida. Look, lightweight, feels great, cool colors, perfect for those hot Florida days.
I agree, AJ. Color looks fire. And you can get your own sweatshirt, polo, hoodie. Go check out Roback. And if you do and you're a first-time customer, Roback.com using the code FOUL gets you 20% off your first purchase. RHOBACK.com, code FOUL. Get after it, FT fam.
So news came out officially, Jack, that Corbin Burnes is now on the 15-day injured list. The Diamondbacks just called it right elbow inflammation, which I wouldn't read much into at all. The Diamondbacks called up Tommy Henry from AAA Reno in order to get some coverage there. We talked about it in our last show, Jack, that we were not necessarily expecting the Diamondbacks to have full clarity on Corbin Burnes' situation within 24 hours or whatever after the injury first happened. We kind of suspected this would take a while, and it seems like that is going to be the case as Corbin Burnes, according to several reports, is seeking more opinions about what his next step should be.
Yeah, the word came out earlier in the day that the MRI was inconclusive. That's what John Gambadoro had tweeted out. However, during the pregame interviews today, Torrey was asked about the MRI being inconclusive, and he used the phrase, "The MRI was not inconclusive." And so that so then Steve Berthume actually mentioned that twice on his pregame open, and the second time he said it, he emphasized the word "not." And then I went over and found our friend Nick Pecoro's reporting. He's in Atlanta, and he wrote the same thing. So, not inconclusive. I guess that means wasn't inconclusive. In other words, they know what's in the MRI. It's not guesswork, but they're not telling us what it is. Was it clean? Is there a tear? We'd have no idea at this point. Now, the second opinion that he's getting is with Surgeon Neil Alatrich. I always worry that I say his name wrong, in Los Angeles. And that's one of the two doctors at AJ Puck got a second opinion from. So I said on our last show that I learned our lesson, my lesson, from always definitely assuming that a second opinion means that it's surgery, because that clearly was not the case with AJ Puck. And we'll just have to hope that that is the case as well, that he won't need surgery. He's just trying to get confirmation that he can avoid surgery. So, we don't know yet. We're going to have to wait probably, I'm guessing, they said Thursday, Friday, so that sounds about right. I mean, 48 to 72 hours before we find out if he's going to have to go under the knife or not. In the meantime, I would expect, just based on the way these things go, there seems to be very little chance that he would be out less than 3 to 4 weeks, is my guess. This is not going to be a minimum IL stint. I mean, they're going to have to completely shut him down for a period of time. And once you completely shut a guy down, like if you shut him down for 2 weeks, then he's got to throw for at least 2 to 3 weeks. If you shut him down for 3 weeks, he's got to throw for 3 weeks before he can come back. If you shut him down, that long. So if he's shut down for 2 to 3 weeks, then he's going to be out for 6 to 8.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're looking at. If you remember, it took a while, like AJ Puck is only doing plyometrics and he's not throwing yet. And then finally, he's throwing off flat ground out to 75 feet, and it took like 4 more updates before he got to 90. So that's how these things go.
You don't love hearing Dr. Neil Elatrash's name in these conversations, right? As you said, we don't know whether he's getting the second opinion because he thinks he needs surgery and he's just sort of wanting to confirm that, or if he thinks he doesn't and he wants to confirm that. But Neil Elatrash is, probably the foremost Tommy John surgeon at this point in baseball. So when you hear that name, you at least know that we're talking about a potentially serious situation for Corbin Burnes. I think we can rule out at this point that the MRI was clean and this was just like a freak thing and Corbin Burnes is totally fine. I think I'm with you that the best case scenario is probably Corbin Burnes coming back in like a month or something like that. I think I would even go as far to say, Jack, that I would be pretty shocked if we saw Corbin Burnes before the All-Star break, just knowing that that's in the middle of July and, we're already here into the month of June. So we don't know, though. At this point, we ultimately don't know. Maybe this news is actually going to be a lot better than we're anticipating. But neither super encouraging nor super discouraging on the Corbin Burnes front at this point. We'll just have to wait and see. Tommy Henry here, Jack. I think we're probably on the same page in that we're not really expecting Tommy Henry to replace Corbin Burnes in the rotation, but just kind of here as a long man for the time being.
Yeah, we have some clarity. I mean, Eduardo Rodriguez is going to start on Friday, and most likely Ryan Nielsen's going to start on Saturday. That's they haven't made it official, but that's what's going to happen. I mean, they've already leaked that out, and clearly Rodriguez is coming off the IL. And clearly, Ryan Nelson will be back in the rotation. So, that's a sad way for Nelson's rotation spot to be saved. This is not how you want it to go down.
Yeah.
And they're still going to need Rodriguez to pitch better than he has in his entire Diamondbacks career. So, I wrote an article today, and at the end of the day, I wrote, look, Zac Gallen has to get back to throwing strikes and being himself, and Eduardo Rodriguez has to actually pitch well, and Ryan Nelson has to continue posting low ERA numbers, and Brandon Pfaadt needs to find a way to keep hitters off the barrel, keep the ball off the barrel of the bat. Maybe all that will happen. Maybe that's what they need. I don't know. But I'm just saying this is what has to happen for this team to be able to weather this storm. They came into this game ranked 26th in starters ERA. And one of the reasons I wrote the article I wrote today was because I kind of want to preempt later on down the road, well, the D-back season went to hell because, Corbin Burnes got hurt and Eduardo Rodriguez got hurt, and it was all because of injuries. No. They're having a really rough time, and they're under 500 because their starting rotation is run prevention has been among the 4 or 5 worst teams in the league. So it hasn't just been the bullpen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't ever want to take standings too seriously at this stage in the season, as I often say. I know there's a few games still happening right now, but as of the conclusion of this game, as we sit here right now, Jack, the Diamondbacks are 4.5 games out of the third wild card spot. And there are a few teams between them and that third spot, which is currently occupied by the Cardinals. The Reds are in front of them, although I think it's, by 0.001 in the win percentage category, basically the same record there. And then the Brewers and the Giants are the other teams between them and St. Louis right now. For as dire as things might feel with Corbin Burnes, certainly, you really have no idea what you're going to get from him the rest of the season. 4.5 games in, 4 months, like, you can overcome that. You can very much overcome that. And I think it also could be helpful to realize that Corbin Burnes was not that's not something that at least I expected the Diamondbacks to do over the offseason, or that I thought they had to do in order to be competitive. I still think that there could be a world, as you were just describing, where the talent that they already had in this organization from a starting pitching front could kind of bounce back and actually be sort of okay, at least good enough the rest of the season, even if Corbin Burnes is not a big part of the picture the rest of the way. Like, Eduardo Rodriguez was a pretty good starter not that long ago, and Merrill Kelly's been good this year, and Brandon Pfaadt had a sub-4 ERA until he very suddenly did not in one inning. And Zac Gallen, his ERA still starts with a 5, but we saw a version of him that was a lot more effective, and wouldn't shock me at least to see Gallen, kind of turn things around the rest of the way. So all that to say, 4.5 games out with this starting pitching staff, the numbers are really poor, but I still think it's possible that there could be enough talent here to turn things around enough.
Anything's possible. I mean, this is why they play the games, right? They have a soft schedule in June. Now, we've talked about the soft schedule with the Nationals and the Pirates, and we know how that worked out.
That didn't work out so well.
So, we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, as far as where they're going to be in contention, I'm not really going to. I mean, I'll still muck around and do my playoff odds, and but I'm not going to focus too much on standings myself until they get 2, 3, 4 games over 500, right? Because you're not getting into the playoffs with a 500 record, and you're probably not getting into the playoffs with 84 wins again. It should take 90. With this National League, it's really hard to imagine getting to the playoffs with less wins. So, if they get to 3, 4, 5 games over 500, then we can really start to think about, okay, this team could make the playoffs. But as of right now, show me.
We've said that a lot lately on this show, and I think it's completely warranted. Big win, all things considered here for the Diamondbacks, as they have now won 2 games in a row. Maybe this is the start of some sort of extended winning streak for them, as they are now 29-31 on the season. Well, we really appreciate all of you being with us here in the chat. Once again, we'd really appreciate it if you drop a like before you say goodbye for the rest of the night, and also be sure to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. And if you're watching us after the fact, you can, of course, comment that way as well. We love to hear from you there. Over on social media, you can find me at Jesse N. Friedman. Over on X, Jack is at ShoeWizard59, and our show is at Snakes Territory. Jack does a great job covering the Diamondbacks over at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI. You can find his work at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. Jack, anything else before we say goodbye here on this Tuesday night?
I do have a request. Could you arrange for us to get to do these live post games when they win just a little more often, please?
Well, maybe this is the start of a streak for us too, Jack. Maybe this is the first of a long run of these in a row. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that front. Thank you all again so much for being with us. We really appreciate it, and we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very soon.